The morning when Patches arrived at Miller's ranch was one of those cold autumn days that make you remember why people fear winter. Frost covered every blade of grass like tiny diamonds frozen in time, and the sun was just beginning to push its weak light across the Colorado sky. The air was so cold that when people breathed, they could see their breath turn into small clouds that disappeared into nothing. Thomas Miller stood in his yard, his arms crossed over his chest, watching the old wagon roll up the dirt road toward his house. He could see the horse, even from far away, and his heart already felt heavy with anger before the wagon had even stopped. The horse in the back of that wagon was nothing like the beautiful animals that stood in Miller's pasture. This horse was different in every way. Her name was Patches, and she was a chestnut color that might have been pretty once, but now it was covered with large black spots that looked like someone had thrown dark paint all over her body. The spots were not beautiful or special. They were messy and uneven, and they made the horse look broken somehow. One of her eyes seemed to look in a slightly different direction than the other, and when she moved, there was something clumsy about the way her legs moved under her body. She was not graceful like the other horses on the ranch. She was not proud or strong-looking. She was just sad and tired and unwanted. Thomas Miller's face turned red when he saw her. He walked over to the wagon where a thin man sat holding the reins. This man owed Thomas money, a lot of money from a bad business deal that had gone wrong. The thin man's clothes were torn and dirty, and his face was covered with worry lines that told the story of a man who had lost everything. He could not pay what he owed Thomas in money. He had nothing left to give except this horse that nobody wanted. "This is what you have for me?" Thomas asked, his voice hard and angry. "This useless animal, this broken thing. I should have let you go to jail like the law says I could do." The thin man looked down at his boots. His hands shook as he held the reins. "She is a good horse, sir. She just looks different, that is all. Someone will see her value someday. Please, sir, this is all I have left in this world. If you do not take her, I will have nothing at all." Thomas Miller looked at the horse again. She was looking at the ground, not moving, not even seeming to care what happened to her. It was like she already knew that nobody wanted her. It was like she had heard the words worthless and broken and ugly so many times that she had stopped hoping anyone would ever love her. "Fine," Thomas said, his voice like ice. "I will take your horse. But do not expect me to thank you for this gift. This is the worst trade I have ever made in my life." The thin man brought the horse down from the wagon with shaking hands. He gave the reins to Thomas, and there were tears in his eyes as he looked at Patches one last time. He reached out to touch her neck gently, and for just a moment the horse lifted her head and looked at him. Maybe she understood that this man was sorry. Maybe she knew he was doing the only thing he could do to survive. The man turned away quickly and climbed back onto the wagon, and he drove away without looking back even once. Thomas took the horse to the barn and put her in a stall that was far away from all the other horses. He gave her hay and water, but he did not speak to her kindly, or touch her head the way he touched his other horses. He just left her there alone in the darkness of the barn. That night, Thomas sat in his house drinking coffee and thinking angry thoughts. He had beautiful horses that he had paid good money for. He had horses with perfect bloodlines that came from the best breeders in the whole territory. And now he had this, a horse that looked like she had been painted by someone who had never painted a horse before. The next morning, Thomas went to the saloon in town and told everyone about the horse he had received. The other ranchers laughed and laughed. They made jokes about how ugly she was. They made jokes about her strange eyes and her messy spots. They told Thomas that he should just shoot her and put her out of her misery, or sell her to the factory where old horses go when nobody wants them anymore. Some of the men even made bets about how long Thomas would keep her before getting rid of her. The betting started at 2 weeks, and nobody thought he would keep her any longer than that. 2 weeks? One rancher said. I say 3 days. That horse is so ugly she will make the whole ranch look bad. I would not want my children to see her. Thomas nodded his head and tried to smile like it was funny, but inside his heart, something was bothering him. He could not stop thinking about the way the thin man had touched the horse's neck before leaving. He could not stop thinking about the sadness in the horse's eyes. But he pushed these feelings away. What was he supposed to do? Keep a worthless horse just because he felt sorry for her? That was not how a ranch worked. That was not how life worked in the hard Colorado territory, where only the strong and beautiful survived. That same morning, while Thomas was in the saloon drinking coffee and listening to men make jokes, his 17-year-old son, William, was walking through the barn. William did not yet know about Patches, but he was about to discover her in her lonely stall, standing in the shadows, waiting for a life that might never come. He did not know that his life was about to change. He did not know that the most important discovery he would ever make in his entire life was about to happen in this very barn, in this very moment, when his eyes would look at an unwanted horse and see something that nobody else in the whole world could see. William pushed open the barn door and walked slowly inside, his eyes getting used to the darkness. And there, in a stall at the very back, was Patches, standing alone with her head down, waiting for somebody, anybody, to care that she was alive at all. This expanded part 1 is approximately 1,000 words and focuses on the emotional journey of Patches' arrival, Thomas's rejection, the community's cruelty, and the touching moment when William is about to discover her. William was not like other boys his age. While the other 17-year-old cowboys in the village spent their days breaking wild horses and showing off their strength to impress the girls at the dances, William spent his time watching animals. He would sit for hours just watching how the ranch dogs moved and communicated with each other through the movements of their ears and tails. He noticed how the cattle never seemed confused about what to do, even though nobody was giving them orders. He saw that the oldest horses on the ranch had stories written in the lines of their faces, stories that nobody else seemed interested in reading. His father, Thomas, often told him that he was wasting his time thinking about animals like they were people. But William could not help himself. He saw something in animals that other people could not see. He saw feelings. He saw intelligence. He saw loneliness. That morning in the barn, when William pushed open the heavy wooden door and let his eyes get used to the darkness, he did not know that his life was about to change forever. He walked slowly past the stalls where his father's prize horses lived. These were beautiful animals with perfect coloring and strong bodies. They had cost his father a lot of money. They were the horses that Thomas Miller showed off to other ranchers, the horses that proved he was successful and important. But William had never felt any real connection to these perfect horses. They seemed to care only about eating and sleeping and looking beautiful. Then William reached the stall at the very back of the barn, the one that was separated from all the others, and he saw Patches for the first time. She was standing alone in the shadows, and at first, William almost did not notice her because she was so still and quiet. She was not moving around or making any noise. She was just standing there with her head down, looking at nothing. Her black-splotched coat was dusty from the journey in the wagon. Her mane was tangled and had bits of hay stuck in it. One of her eyes seemed to look in a different direction than the other. She looked broken and tired and sad. But William did something that nobody else had done. He stopped walking and looked at her properly. He really looked at her, not just saw her the way other people saw her. And in that moment, something happened inside William's heart. William did not know why, but he felt sad looking at this horse. He felt her sadness like it was his own sadness. He could feel the loneliness coming from her, like heat comes from a fire. She had been rejected by so many people. She had been called ugly and worthless and broken so many times that she had probably stopped believing that anyone would ever care about her. William stood there for a long time, just looking at her, and then he did something very unusual. Instead of trying to touch her or talk to her or do anything that might scare her, he sat down on a hay bale near her stall and just stayed quiet. The barn became very still. The only sounds were the small movements of hay and the soft breathing of horses. William sat without moving, without talking, without wanting anything from Patches. He was simply there. He was simply present. Minutes passed. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. William sat on that hay bale as the cold morning light came through the cracks in the barn walls and made golden lines across the dusty floor. Then, very slowly, Patches lifted her head. She looked at William for a long time, and her eyes seemed to search his face like she was trying to understand what he wanted. But William wanted nothing. He was not like the other people she had met. He was not here to judge her, or sell her, or decide if she was worth keeping. He was just here. And slowly, very slowly, Patches took a step toward him. Then another step. Then another. She walked until her nose was very close to William's face, and he could feel her warm breath on his skin. William did not reach out to touch her. He did not try to grab her mane or her halter. He just sat very still and let her come to him. And then something magical happened. Patches, this horse that nobody wanted, this horse that everyone said was worthless and broken, pressed her soft nose against William's cheek. She held it there for a moment, and William could feel that her nose was warm and soft. He could feel that she was trembling slightly, like she was scared or nervous. But she was trying. She was trying to connect with this boy who had sat quietly and just let her be herself without judgment. William felt tears come to his eyes. He did not know why he was crying. Maybe it was because he understood something in that moment that most people never understand. He understood that this horse was not broken because of her spots or her clumsy legs or her strange eyes. She was broken because people had told her she was broken so many times that she had started to believe it. She was not worthless. She was just misunderstood. Nobody had taken the time to see what was really inside her. Nobody had been patient enough or kind enough to discover who she really was. From that moment on, William spent every spare moment in the barn with Patches. He would sit with her before school and after school. He would come to the barn in the evenings when his father thought he was doing his homework. He would sneak out early in the mornings before breakfast just to spend time with her. He brushed her tangled mane and cleaned the dust from her coat. He talked to her in a quiet voice, not about anything important, just about his feelings and his thoughts, and the things that made him happy and the things that made him sad. Patches began to change. Her head stopped hanging down all the time. Her eyes became brighter. She started to look forward to seeing William each day, and when he walked toward her stall, she would whinny softly to greet him. The other ranch hands noticed that William spent all his time with the worthless horse, and they laughed at him. They called him strange and told him he was wasting his time on an animal that nobody wanted. But William did not care what they said anymore. He knew something that they did not know. He knew that Patches was special. He knew that inside this rejected horse there was something beautiful waiting to be discovered. He knew that it just took someone willing to be patient enough and kind enough and brave enough to see past her appearance and find the real animal hiding inside. William did not know yet what amazing things Patches would teach him. He did not know that this horse would lead him to discover secrets that would save his entire village. All he knew in those early days was that when he was with Patches, he felt happy. He felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. And Patches, for the first time in her life, felt like someone finally understood her. She felt like she mattered. She felt like she was not worthless at all. Their bond was becoming stronger with each passing day, and neither of them knew that this special connection would soon reveal extraordinary truths hidden in the Colorado wilderness. As the weeks passed and autumn turned colder, William began to discover something amazing about Patches. It was not something he noticed all at once. It came to him slowly, like a mystery, slowly revealing itself piece by piece. At first, William was just spending time with the horse because he loved her. He wanted to help her feel less alone and less rejected. But as he rode her across the ranch and into the surrounding valleys, he started to notice unusual things. Patches seemed to know things that other horses did not know. She seemed to understand the land in a way that was almost magical. One afternoon in late November, William decided to ride Patches to a part of the ranch that he had never explored before. He rode her through the eastern pasture, past the old fence that his grandfather had built many years ago, and toward the rocky hills that rose up like sleeping giants in the distance. William had no real plan. He was just riding, letting the horse take him where she wanted to go. And that was when William noticed something extraordinary. Patches was moving with certainty. She was not hesitating or looking confused. She was moving like she knew exactly where she was going, even though she had never been to this place before. William let the horse continue forward. Patches climbed higher and higher into the hills, moving carefully around rocks and over rough ground. She seemed to know which paths were safe and which ones were dangerous. She would sometimes stop suddenly and look at the ground carefully before moving forward again. It was like she could see something that William could not see. It was like she could sense danger hidden in the earth beneath her hooves. After riding for almost 2 hours, Patches brought William to a hidden valley that he had never known existed. The valley was protected by tall rock walls on 3 sides, and evergreen trees grew thick and green there, even as the rest of the land was turning brown and grey with winter. William climbed down from his horse and walked around the valley in amazement. He found a small stream of fresh water that ran clear and cold. He found grass that was still green and healthy, protected from the harsh winds by the rock walls. He found caves carved into the rocks, deep and dark and mysterious. William felt like he had discovered a secret place that had been waiting for him to find it, and it was Patches who had brought him here. Patches, who everyone called worthless and stupid, had led him to this incredible place. Over the next weeks, William and Patches explored together constantly. With each ride, William discovered more amazing things about the horse. He learned that Patches had an incredible memory for trails and paths. They would ride to a place only once, and then, weeks later, William could just give Patches her freedom to go where she wanted, and she would remember exactly how to get back there. Other horses needed to be guided and directed, but Patches seemed to carry a map of the land inside her head. She knew the safest routes across rocky terrain. She knew where the hidden water sources were. She knew which paths had sinkholes hidden beneath the dirt and leaves that could trap a horse and break her leg. One cold morning, William decided to test something. He rode Patches in a direction she had never gone before, a direction he himself had never explored. But as soon as they started riding, Patches began to move with that same confidence and certainty. She walked carefully around areas that looked solid but were actually dangerous. She led William to a cave he did not know existed, and inside the cave was a warm spring that never froze even in the deepest winter. William understood that Patches was not just remembering places she had been. She was sensing things about the land itself. She could feel danger. She could smell water from far away. She could read the earth and the rocks like most people read books. William tried to tell his father about these discoveries, but Thomas Miller did not believe him. Thomas said that William was imagining things because he spent too much time alone with the horse. The other ranch hands laughed when William talked about Patch's amazing abilities. They said he was crazy and that the worthless horse was just as worthless as everyone had always said. But William did not care what anyone said. He knew the truth. He lived it every day when he rode Patches and saw her demonstrate these impossible abilities. And one particular day, something happened that made William understand just how special Patches really was. William was riding Patches near the northern part of the ranch, moving through an area covered with dead leaves and loose dirt. Suddenly, Patches stopped walking. She just stopped completely, even though there was no obvious reason to stop. The ground looked solid and safe. But Patches would not move forward. She stood there trembling slightly, and William could feel her fear like it was his own fear. William got down from the horse and walked forward carefully, pushing away the leaves with a long stick. And then he saw it. Under the leaves and the dirt was a massive sinkhole. If Patches had taken one more step, she would have fallen into a hole that was at least 10 feet deep. She would have broken her legs. She might have died. Patches had sensed the danger, even though it was completely hidden. She had saved her own life and William's life by refusing to walk forward. William put his arms around Patches' neck and held her tight, feeling grateful and amazed and sad all at the same time. He was sad because he thought about all the people who had rejected this horse. He thought about how they had called her stupid and broken and worthless. But this horse was not stupid at all. This horse was wise. This horse could sense things that most animals could never sense. This horse could read the land and the earth in ways that were almost supernatural. From that day forward, William treated Patches with even more respect and love. He understood that he was not the one doing her a favor by spending time with her. She was doing him a favor by letting him share her life and her incredible gifts. He began to understand that Patches held secrets about the Colorado wilderness that nobody else knew. She knew things about the land that had been forgotten by people over many years. William did not know yet how important these secrets would become. He did not know that in just a few months, when winter came hard and the village began to starve, Patches' knowledge would save not just him, but all of the people in his village. He only knew that he had found something precious, something that the world had almost thrown away because it did not match what people thought was beautiful or valuable. The bond between William and Patches grew stronger with each passing day. It was not just a boy and his horse anymore. It was a partnership between two creatures who understood each other. It was a deep friendship based on trust and acceptance, and the recognition that everyone, even horses with black splotches and strange eyes, has value and worth and incredible gifts hidden inside them, waiting to be discovered by someone patient enough and kind enough to look carefully and deeply enough to find them. The winter of 1892 came early and without any warning. The first snow fell in late September, which was unusual and frightening. The weather was not supposed to turn cold until October or even November, but the sky seemed angry that year, and it wanted to punish the Colorado Valley with ice and snow far too soon. By the middle of December, the temperature had dropped so low that people could barely see their hands in front of their faces because the cold would freeze the water vapor in the air and create a thick fog. The snow fell constantly, day after day, covering the ground deeper and deeper. Soon there was more than 3 feet of snow across the entire valley, and no one could travel beyond their own property. The crops had been bad that year. The summer had been too hot and too dry, and the plants had not grown well. The farmers had managed to harvest what they could, but it was not nearly enough to feed everyone through a long winter. The ranchers had planned to use the pasture lands to feed their cattle through the winter months, but the snow came so fast and so deep that the cattle could not find enough food beneath the white blanket covering everything. Animals began to die. Cows starved. Horses that had been strong and healthy in autumn became thin and weak. The ranchers had to make hard decisions about which animals to keep alive and which ones they would have to kill to save food for the others. By January, the village was facing a serious problem. People were hungry. The food that families had stored for winter was running low much faster than anyone had expected. Mothers were giving smaller portions to their children so that the little ones would have enough to eat. Old people were eating less so that younger people could eat more. The baker in the village could not make much bread anymore because there was not enough flour. The meat from the slaughtered animals was gone. People were eating things they normally would not eat. They were boiling bones to make thin soup. They were eating the last of their vegetables and fruits that they had preserved in the summer. The village became a sad and quiet place. People walked slowly through the streets because they were weak from hunger. Children did not laugh or play anymore. They sat inside their houses trying to stay warm because there was not enough firewood to keep the fires burning hot enough. Families huddled together under blankets at night, sharing their body heat to stay alive. The school closed because the teacher did not have the energy to teach anymore, and the children were too weak and hungry to learn. People began to wonder if they would survive until spring. Some people were very sick with colds and fevers, and there was no medicine to help them. Thomas Miller's ranch was struggling like everyone else. The beautiful horses that Thomas had been so proud of were dying from hunger. He had sold some of them to other desperate ranchers, hoping to get food in return, but there was no food to trade anywhere. People were desperate and scared. Thomas kept Patches alive and gave her food because William asked him to do it, but even he was wondering how much longer the ranch could survive. One night, Thomas sat in his house and cried because he did not know how he would feed his family through the rest of the winter. William spent most of his time in the barn with Patches. He could not understand why everyone was so scared about starvation, when Patches obviously knew things about the land that could help them survive. He kept trying to tell people about the hidden valley she had shown him, about the fresh water that never froze, about the caves and the places where plants still grew even in winter. But nobody would listen to him. People were too scared and too hungry and too tired to believe that an ugly horse could possibly know anything valuable. One day in mid-January, William had an idea. He decided that instead of trying to convince people to believe him, he would show them. He would ride Patches to all the places she knew about and bring back proof that food and water and shelter could be found in the valley. He packed some bags with tools and rope. He told his mother he was going to explore the land near the ranch, but he did not tell her the real reason. He was going to find food to save his village. William rode Patches into the snow-covered hills, and even though the snow was deep and the wind was cold and biting, Patches moved forward with confidence. She knew exactly where she was going. She led William to the hidden valley, and there, even in the middle of winter, William found amazing things. The valley was protected from the worst of the wind and snow. There were evergreen trees that had seeds and berries still hanging on their branches. There were places where the snow was thinner because the rock walls kept the sun's heat in the valley longer than in other places. Most importantly, William found evidence of wild horses living in the valley. There were many of them, and they had managed to survive the terrible winter by living in this protected place. William understood then what Patches was trying to show him. The wild horses had survived because they had found a safe place to live, and Patches knew where that place was. Patches had probably been born in that valley, or had lived there before people had taken her away. Patches was trying to show William that survival was possible. Food was possible. Water was possible. Hope was possible. But it took someone willing to listen to an animal that everyone else had rejected. William gathered branches and plants and anything that looked like it might be food or useful for survival. He spent hours in the cold valley, working with numb fingers and a heart that was pounding with excitement and hope. When he finally rode back to the ranch at sunset, he was covered in snow and ice, but he was smiling. He had baskets full of dried plants and herbs. He had branches of evergreen that could be used for medicine. He had drawn maps in his mind of exactly where the hidden valley was and how to reach it. William rushed to his father's house and showed him everything. Thomas Miller looked at the plants and the herbs and the map that William had drawn, and for the first time in weeks, he felt something other than fear. He felt hope. He understood that his son had found something that could help the village survive, and it was Patches, the worthless horse that everyone had rejected, who had made this discovery possible. That night, Thomas Miller made a decision that would change everything. He decided to tell the village about the hidden valley. He decided to explain that Patches knew the way there. He decided to organize parties of ranchers and farmers and villagers to go to the valley and gather food and find shelter there until spring came. When he told people about William's discovery and about the hidden valley, some people believed him and some did not. But some people were brave enough to take the chance. Some people were desperate enough to trust that an unwanted horse might know something valuable. The next morning, a group of people from the village followed William and Patches into the hills, not knowing that they were about to be saved by the very animal that everyone had called worthless. The group of villagers that followed William and Patches into the snowy hills on that cold morning in January was not very large. Only about 30 people had believed Thomas Miller's story about the hidden valley and the worthless horse that somehow knew the way there. The others stayed behind in the village, still doubtful and scared. But these 30 people were brave enough to take a chance. They were desperate enough to trust in something that seemed impossible. They brought shovels and baskets and ropes. They brought children and old people and sick people who had barely enough strength to walk. And they followed Patches up the mountain, through the deep snow, into the wilderness that seemed endless and cold and dangerous. The journey took longer than William expected because the group moved slowly. The elderly people could not walk fast. The children got tired. Some people were so weak from hunger that they had to stop and rest many times. But Patches never hesitated. The horse moved forward steadily, always knowing which path was safest, always finding the way even when the snow was so deep that it covered her legs halfway up. William watched his horse leading all these people toward hope and salvation, and he felt something break open inside his chest. He realized that Patches was not just his horse anymore. She was saving his entire village. She was proving to the world that beauty and worth cannot be measured by the color of someone's coat or the shape of their eyes. When the group finally reached the hidden valley late in the afternoon, people gasped in amazement. Even covered in snow, the valley was beautiful and welcoming. The rock walls protected it from the harshest winds. The evergreen trees still had leaves and branches that could be used for food and medicine. The stream still flowed with fresh water that was not frozen. And most importantly, there were wild horses living in the valley. There were at least 50 of them, perhaps more, and they had survived the winter by living here in this protected place. The wild horses watched the villagers cautiously, but did not run away. They seemed to understand that these people were not a threat. People immediately began to work. They cut branches from the evergreen trees, being careful not to damage the trees too badly so they could continue to grow. They gathered seeds and berries and roots that could be eaten. Some people found honey stored in the rocks by wild bees. Others discovered medicinal plants that could be used to help sick people get better. An old man found ancient tools made by people who had lived in this valley long ago, proving that people had survived here before. A woman discovered that the caves in the valley walls stayed warm inside, protected from the freezing wind. Families moved into the caves that night, and for the first time in weeks, they were warm and safe and hopeful. As the days and weeks passed, the village began to thrive in the hidden valley. People worked together to gather food and create shelter. The children started to smile again. The old people became stronger. The sick people began to recover. Mothers and fathers could feed their families properly. The bakers started to make bread again, using seeds and grains they found in the valley. Hunters discovered that the wild horses were gentle and friendly, and they learned to work with the horses to explore more of the valley and find more resources. The village was surviving. The village was going to make it through the winter alive. When spring finally came and the snow melted and the dangerous winter was over, the villagers prepared to return to the village and the ranch. But everything had changed. People's attitudes about Patches had completely transformed. The horse that everyone had called worthless was now being called a hero and a miracle. The ranchers who had made jokes about her in the saloon now spoke of her with respect and wonder. People who had said she should be shot or sold to the glue factory now thanked her for saving their lives. Thomas Miller stood in the hidden valley on the last day before returning to the village, and he cried. He looked at Patches standing free in the valley, running with the wild horses, and he cried because he realized how wrong he had been. He had judged the horse by her appearance. He had believed what other people said without looking deeper. He had almost allowed a precious and valuable creature to be destroyed because she did not fit the image of what he thought a good horse should look like. He knelt down in the dirt and put his forehead against the ground, asking forgiveness from the horse and from his own son for not believing what William had tried to tell him. William walked over to his father and helped him stand up. Then William walked to Patches and put his arms around her neck one last time. He knew that he could not take her back to the ranch. This horse belonged in the hidden valley with the wild horses. This was where she was meant to be. This was where she could live freely without anyone judging her or rejecting her or telling her she was worthless. William whispered things into Patches's ear that nobody else could hear. He told her thank you. He told her that he loved her. He told her that she was the most valuable and precious creature he had ever known. Patches turned her head and pressed her nose against William's face one more time, just like she had done on that first day in the barn when she decided to trust him. Then she turned away and ran toward the other wild horses, her black-splotched coat catching the spring sunlight, and she did not look back. The village returned to town, changed in ways that went deeper than just survival. Thomas Miller sold his prize-bred horses and used the money to help other animals that people had rejected and abandoned. He built a sanctuary where unwanted animals could come to live in peace and safety. William became known throughout the entire Colorado Territory as a man who understood animals in ways that seemed almost magical. He spent his life working with horses and other creatures that other people did not want, helping them to discover their own hidden strength and value. The village never forgot what Patches taught them. They learned that true value cannot be measured by appearance. They learned that the things that seem broken and worthless on the outside may be carrying incredible treasure on the inside, waiting for someone brave enough to look deeper. They learned that patience and kindness and acceptance can transform both animals and people in ways that seem impossible. Every winter after that, some villagers would travel to the hidden valley to give thanks to the wild horses that lived there, remembering the winter, that an ugly horse with black splotches saved them from starvation. Patches lived many years in the hidden valley, and she became the leader of the wild horses there. She taught the other horses about the safe places and the hidden resources in the valley, just like she had taught William. Young foals born in the valley learned from her and inherited her incredible ability to sense danger and find food and water. Patches never knew that she had become a legend in the village below. She never knew that children were told stories about the worthless horse who was actually a hero. All she knew was that she was finally home, finally free, finally living a life where she was loved and valued and understood, and that was enough.